"You're fired. Consider it my gift to you." The text message seared into my vision as I stood in my ivory silk wedding dress, holding a bouquet of white roses and baby's breath that my sister had carefully arranged that morning. Just moments before, I had whispered "I do" to the love of my life, James Mitchell, in front of our closest family and friends. Now, in the elegant marble vestibule of St. Matthew's Cathedral, surrounded by towering arrangements of peonies and the distant sound of our guests' celebratory laughter echoing through the halls, I stared at my phone screen in complete and utter shock. Derek Harrison, my 34-year-old supervisor and the spoiled son of Sterling Architecture's distinguished owner, had chosen my wedding day, the most sacred day of my life, to completely destroy my career with a single cruel text message. My hands trembled as I read those words again and again, hoping somehow they would change or disappear entirely. My name is Madison Cooper, and until that devastating text arrived at exactly 3:17 in the afternoon, I was the irreplaceable heart and soul of Sterling Architecture's project management division. I'm 28 years old, the kind of meticulous person who organizes her entire closet by color and season, who maintains detailed spreadsheets for everything from grocery lists to vacation planning, and who can spot a structural inconsistency in architectural blueprints from clear across a crowded conference room. My colleagues had affectionately nicknamed me the database, because I could remember every single client's preferences, every zoning requirement for the greater Chicago area, every permit deadline and regulatory change without needing to consult a single note or reference document. This wasn't just natural talent, it was years of dedicated hard work and attention to detail that had made me indispensable. I showed the horrifying message to James, my hands still trembling uncontrollably as I passed him my phone. His reaction completely blindsided me and caught me off guard. Instead of the explosive outrage I fully expected from my protective new husband, a slow, mysterious, almost knowing smile spread across his handsome face. He gently took my shaking hands in his steady ones, kissed each of my knuckles tenderly, and whispered with remarkable calm, "Check your messages later, sweetheart." Today belongs to us and no one else. How could he possibly be so calm and collected when I had just lost my position as senior project manager at the most prestigious and respected architectural firm in all of Chicago? This was the job I had sacrificed countless weekends, holidays, family gatherings, and late nights to build and perfect over 3 exhausting but rewarding years of my professional life. But something deep and reassuring in James's steady brown eyes, the same eyes that had captivated me during our first meeting at City Hall 18 months earlier, told me to trust him, completely and without question. So I powered down my phone entirely, handed it to my maid of honor, Sarah, with strict instructions not to check it, and walked arm in arm with my new husband through the cathedral's massive carved oak doors into a joyful shower of rice and enthusiastic cheers from our families and friends. 4 hours later, as we swayed together during our first dance as husband and wife to Etta James's "At Last," Sarah rushed over to our table with wide, clearly panicked eyes. "Madison, I'm so sorry to interrupt, but your phone hasn't stopped buzzing for the past hour. You have 156 missed calls, and they keep coming." I reluctantly took my phone from her with growing dread and checked the screen. Dozens of calls from the Sterling office, from frantic coworkers, from clients, and 23 separate calls from a number I recognized immediately. Robert Harrison, Sterling Architecture's respected founder and Derek's father. And that's when the full realization hit me like a freight train. This wasn't just a vindictive termination from a jealous supervisor. This was the beginning of something far more significant and life-changing than I could have ever imagined in my wildest dreams. I really want to know how far this incredible story travels around the world, so please leave me a comment to let me know exactly where you're listening from right now. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel, because your support is honestly the biggest motivation for me to keep creating even better content for you. Thank you so much for being here with me and taking the time to listen to this story that changed my entire life. Growing up in the small manufacturing town of Bloomington, Indiana, I learned the true value of hard work and perseverance from my parents, both dedicated high school mathematics teachers who firmly believed that excellence in any field came from meticulous preparation and unwavering persistence. They taught me that shortcuts might seem appealing, but they always led to problems down the road. When my father suffered a massive heart attack during my sophomore year at Northwestern University, I nearly made the devastating decision to drop out completely to help my mother manage the mounting medical bills and rehabilitation costs. Instead, I made the grueling choice to double my course load while working exhausting night shifts at a 24-hour copy center near campus, surviving on 3 hours of sleep and pure determination. Despite the incredible challenges, I graduated summa cum laude with a bachelor's degree in architecture and urban planning, plus a demanding minor in construction management that required an additional year of coursework. That unique combination of creative design knowledge and practical construction expertise landed me the coveted position at Sterling Architecture 3 years ago. Robert Harrison, a distinguished gentleman in his early 60s with silver hair and an impeccable reputation throughout Chicago's architectural community, immediately recognized my unusual ability to bridge the gap between creative design vision and practical execution reality. He hired me specifically to completely modernize their outdated project management systems that had remained essentially unchanged since the company's founding in the early 90s. I spent months designing a revolutionary comprehensive digital platform from absolute scratch, meticulously tracking every single blueprint revision, client modification request, budget allocation, permit submission, and regulatory compliance requirement. The system was absolutely revolutionary for a well-established firm that had stubbornly relied on paper filing systems and handwritten notes for nearly 3 decades. The results spoke for themselves with undeniable clarity. Project completion times improved by an impressive 42% across all departments. Client satisfaction scores soared to unprecedented levels. Costly delays and miscommunications became virtually non-existent. Robert publicly called me the single best investment this company has ever made during our annual holiday party last December, praising my innovations in front of the entire staff. Then everything changed dramatically when Derek Harrison arrived on the scene 4 months ago. At 34 years old, Derek had already floundered through various management positions at 3 different companies, never successfully finding his professional footing anywhere he worked. Despite his obvious struggles, he possessed his father's naturally confident bearing and the same sharp jawline. But unfortunately, none of Robert's hard-earned business insight, strategic thinking, or essential interpersonal skills that made people want to follow his leadership. Robert announced his gradual transition toward retirement and simultaneously promoted Derek to operations director, making him my direct supervisor and giving him authority over every aspect of my work. The office atmosphere shifted overnight from collaborative to competitive. Where Robert had actively sought my input on major strategic decisions, Derek systematically excluded me from important client meetings and planning sessions. Where Robert had publicly praised my innovations and given me credit, Derek quietly took credit for my ideas during presentations. When I proposed mandatory comprehensive training sessions to properly document my proprietary system for the entire team, ensuring continuity and knowledge transfer, Derek immediately canceled them as unnecessary overhead expenses that don't generate revenue. His decision frustrated me deeply because I knew the system's complexity required proper training to function effectively. That's when I met James Mitchell, actually. I was at City Hall submitting detailed plans for Sterling's most ambitious project ever, a $42 million downtown revitalization that would completely transform 6 historic city blocks into a mixed-use development featuring residential units, commercial spaces, and public green areas. James worked in the municipal planning department as a senior code compliance officer, the patient, methodical man behind the permits counter who actually took time to examine submissions thoroughly and ask pertinent questions instead of rubber stamping them like many of his colleagues did. We initially connected over detailed discussions about sustainable building materials and innovative, energy-efficient design approaches. Our professional conversations evolved into coffee meetings during lunch breaks, then long dinners at cozy neighborhood restaurants throughout Chicago, where we discussed everything from architecture to literature to our shared love of jazz music. James became my emotional sanctuary from Derek's increasingly toxic and undermining management style that was making every workday feel like a battle. What I didn't know during those early months of our relationship was that James had been meticulously noticing troubling patterns in recent submissions from Sterling Architecture, specifically the projects that Derek had handled personally without oversight. 2 months into our deepening relationship, James proposed during a romantic weekend getaway to Lake Geneva, Wisconsin. We planned an intimate wedding ceremony on relatively short notice, partly because we were both practical people who genuinely preferred substance over expensive spectacle, and partly because I was sensing that my position at Sterling was becoming increasingly unstable and potentially precarious under Derek's vindictive leadership. Derek had been making increasingly ominous comments about restructuring for maximum efficiency and eliminating redundancies in staffing. I never imagined in my wildest nightmares that he would actually have the audacity to terminate my employment on my wedding day itself. During our honeymoon week at a beautiful oceanfront resort in Maui, staying in a suite overlooking Whaley Beach, the relentless calls never stopped coming. I made the deliberate decision to send every single one straight to voicemail without listening. Robert's increasingly desperate messages evolved from urgent business requests to pleading personal appeals to practically begging for my immediate return to save the company from complete Zokyeon disaster. On our third blissful day in paradise, while James and I were relaxing by the infinity pool sipping fresh mango smoothies and watching surfers ride the waves, Robert left a message offering to triple my current salary if I would abandon my honeymoon and come back to Chicago immediately. I deleted the message without even considering the offer for a single second. 2 days later, he left another voicemail offering me partial ownership in the firm, something that would have been worth hundreds of thousands of dollars. Again, I didn't respond or acknowledge his increasingly frantic attempts to reach me. James watched me decline these incredible, life-changing offers without any commentary or pressure to reconsider. He understood something fundamental about my character that even I was still discovering about myself. This situation had never been about money, prestige, or professional advancement. It was about basic human respect, professional dignity, and the principle that people shouldn't be able to treat others cruelly without facing meaningful consequences for their actions. But wait, let me tell you exactly what happened next, because this is where everything truly changed direction in ways I never could have anticipated. You know, James said thoughtfully as we watched the sunset paint the Pacific Ocean in brilliant oranges, deep purples, and soft pinks on our final evening in paradise, there's currently an opening in the Municipal Planning Department's consulting division. They desperately need someone who understands architectural submissions from both the creative design perspective and the regulatory compliance side of things. I turned to him immediately, intrigued by the exciting possibilities this suggestion opened up. Are you suggesting exactly what I think you're suggesting right now? I'm suggesting you start your own independent consulting firm with the city of Chicago as your very first major client. They would pay extremely well for your expertise in creating comprehensive systems that catch exactly the kind of dangerous corner cutting that Derek has been doing. The brilliant idea took root in my mind immediately, like a seed finding perfect soil. By the time our plane touched down at O'Hare Airport 3 days later, I had drafted a detailed, comprehensive business plan on my laptop during the flight. 3 days after returning home, I officially registered Cooper Consulting Solutions with the state of Illinois. My phone rang within minutes of the business registration becoming public record, before I had even finished celebrating. Robert Harrison was calling me directly. For the first time in 2 weeks of complete radio silence, I made the decision to answer the call. "Madison, thank God you finally picked up. We're in complete crisis mode here. The downtown project has stalled entirely. 3 major clients are threatening to walk away from multi-million-dollar contracts. Please just name any price and come back to us immediately." I kept my voice perfectly calm and professionally neutral, despite the satisfaction I felt. "I'm sorry to hear about your current difficulties, Robert, but I'm no longer available for traditional employment arrangements. I've successfully launched my own consulting firm." There was a long pause before he responded with obvious desperation. "Then we'll hire your consulting firm immediately, whatever the cost. Whatever you're charging other clients, we'll pay double that rate without question." I let the silence stretch between us for several long, meaningful seconds, knowing that each moment of quiet increased my negotiating power exponentially. Actually, my first major client is the municipal planning department itself. I'm designing comprehensive new verification protocols for all building submissions throughout the city of Chicago. The sharp intake of breath on the other end told me he understood the serious implications perfectly. If I was working directly with the city to create better verification systems, I would inevitably discover Derek's dangerous alterations to approved plans if James hadn't already reported them through official channels. The city would have complete access to my expertise in identifying exactly the kinds of violations Derek had been making. "Madison, please listen to me carefully. Derek made a terrible, completely inexcusable mistake. He was intimidated by your exceptional competence, jealous of your close working relationship with me. Please let me fix this situation properly." His voice carried genuine regret, but I had moved far beyond the point where apologies could repair the damage. "Some things simply can't be fixed, Robert. Some bridges once deliberately burned remain nothing but ash and bitter memories forever." I ended the call with a sense of finality and looked at James, who had been listening to the entire conversation from our kitchen table with an encouraging smile. "Is it wrong that I felt so incredibly satisfied just now?" I asked him, still processing the rush of power I had felt during the conversation. He shook his head with obvious pride in his eyes. "It's not wrong to stand up for yourself and your principles, especially when public safety is potentially involved in the equation." The following week, I began my official contract with the City of Chicago, working directly with the Municipal Planning Department to revolutionize their oversight systems. With my insider knowledge of exactly how firms like Sterling operated behind the scenes, I quickly identified critical vulnerabilities in the current verification system that allowed dangerous shortcuts to go completely undetected. I created comprehensive new protocols that would automatically catch unauthorized changes to approved plans, particularly structural modifications made without proper engineering review or safety analysis. These weren't minor tweaks, but fundamental changes that could affect building integrity and public safety. As part of my systematic and thorough process, the city conducted an extensive audit of all recent submissions from major architectural firms throughout Chicago. Predictably, they discovered numerous serious violations in Sterling's downtown project plans, specifically in submissions that Derek had handled personally, without proper oversight or review. Load-bearing walls had been dangerously thinned to save on materials costs. Foundation specifications altered to use cheaper concrete mixtures, and mandatory safety features like emergency exits and fire suppression systems removed entirely from the approved plans. The violations weren't just unethical, they were potentially deadly. The investigation that followed was swift and absolutely devastating for Sterling architecture. The downtown project was permanently halted and reassigned to Morrison and Associates, Sterling's biggest and most capable competitor. Derek wasn't just fired from his position, he was completely blacklisted throughout the entire architectural industry in Chicago and beyond. His professional architecture license was immediately suspended pending a formal ethics review that could take years to complete, effectively ending his career in the field. The Illinois Board of Architecture initiated their own investigation into his conduct, which would become part of his permanent professional record. Sterling Architecture lost over $12 million in active contracts, penalty payments, and legal fees within 30 days. Their stellar reputation, carefully built over 30 years of Robert's dedicated leadership and ethical practices, crumbled in less than 4 weeks. The architectural community was shocked by the speed and completeness of their downfall. Through industry contacts and former colleagues who still respected me, I heard that Robert had suffered a minor heart attack from the overwhelming stress and public humiliation. Despite everything Derek had done to me personally, that news brought me no satisfaction whatsoever because I genuinely respected Robert. Robert had been an exceptional mentor and father figure, before his blind loyalty to his son completely clouded his professional judgment and ethical standards. My consulting business grew rapidly beyond my wildest expectations and most optimistic projections. Within 6 months, I had secured contracts with 4 different municipal governments and was actively hiring additional, qualified staff. The Chicago Tribune featured my story in their Sunday business section, calling me the woman who revolutionized architectural accountability and describing my journey from wedding day termination to industry leadership. James received a well-deserved promotion at the planning department for his ethical stand and thorough documentation of the violations. We purchased our first home together, a charming 1920s bungalow in Lincoln Park with original hardwood floors, beautiful crown molding, and enormous potential for renovation. Every weekend, we worked together on restoration projects, stripping old wallpaper and refinishing floors ourselves. Then, exactly 1 year to the day after my wedding, a thick cream envelope arrived at my office via certified mail. The return address made my heart skip. Harrison and Associates Architecture. Inside was a handwritten letter from Robert Harrison himself, written in his familiar, precise handwriting on expensive letterhead. "Dear Madison," the letter began in Robert's careful, familiar script, "some debts can never be fully repaid, but sincere acknowledgement is the essential first step toward genuine atonement and redemption. I have spent this entire difficult year completely rebuilding what my son's reckless actions and my own negligent oversight destroyed. Derek has completed an intensive professional ethics program at Northwestern University's Continuing Education Division and now works in a junior position under constant, careful supervision. He finally understands the full gravity of his actions and their potentially catastrophic consequences for public safety and professional integrity. Sterling has completely new leadership structure and revolutionary new protocols for every single aspect of our operations. We have systematically overhauled every system, every submission process, every review procedure from the ground up. We are fundamentally a different company now, one that prioritizes safety and ethics above profit margins. Read the letter 3 times carefully, each reading revealing new layers of meaning and genuine remorse. The man I had once deeply respected as a mentor and father figure was essentially asking for my professional blessing on his company's complete resurrection from the ashes of scandal. Part of me felt vindicated by his humble words and obvious regret, while another part remained skeptical about whether people could truly change after such devastating failures and public humiliation. Could someone like Derek really transform himself? Or was this just another carefully orchestrated performance? I showed the letter to James that evening over dinner at our kitchen table, the same spot where we had planned my business launch exactly 1 year earlier. What do you honestly think? Should I actually meet with him after everything that happened between us? James set down his fork thoughtfully and considered the question carefully, as he always did with important matters that could affect our future. What would be your primary purpose in going? Closure, vindication, professional curiosity, or something else entirely different? His thoughtful approach to complex situations was one of the many reasons I had fallen deeply in love with him. He never rushed to judgment or offered simplistic solutions to complicated problems that required careful consideration and emotional intelligence. I pondered his question for several minutes, watching the evening light gradually fade through our kitchen window while considering all the possible implications. All of those things, I suppose. And maybe, just maybe, to see if genuine change and redemption are actually possible in situations like this. To see if Derek has truly learned from his costly mistakes and grown as a person, or if this is just another manipulative performance designed to get what he wants. James nodded approvingly at my reasoning. "Then I think you have your answer," he replied with an encouraging smile, "but trust your instincts completely when you're there. You'll know quickly if their transformation is authentic or just carefully orchestrated theater designed to manipulate you." I scheduled the meeting for the following week, despite my initial strong reservations and lingering anger. When my assistant informed me that Robert had specifically requested the meeting take place at Sterling's offices, rather than at my successful downtown consulting firm, I almost canceled immediately. Returning to that building felt like stepping backward into painful memories and potentially surrendering the position of power and independence I had worked so hard to establish. But my curiosity ultimately won out over my reluctance and desire to avoid confrontation. When I arrived at the familiar limestone building on Michigan Avenue, even the lobby looked completely different. Fresh paint in warm colors, elegant new furniture, and an atmosphere that felt lighter and more welcoming than I remembered. The receptionist, a young professional woman I didn't recognize at all, greeted me with unusual deference and what seemed like genuine respect. "Ms. Cooper, Mr. Harrison is waiting for you in the main conference room. He asked me to tell you how truly honored we are by your visit today." As I walked through the hallways toward the conference room, I noticed significant changes throughout the entire office space that showed real investment in renewal. New faces working diligently at every desk, productive energy crackling through conversations between colleagues, and modern computer systems visible on monitors as I passed various workstations. The oppressive atmosphere I remembered from Derek's brief but destructive reign had been completely replaced by something that felt genuinely productive and collaborative. They had truly started over from scratch, just as Robert's heartfelt letter had promised. The conference room door stood open, and I took a deep breath before stepping inside to face my past. I found not just Robert waiting for me, but Derek as well, sitting stiffly beside his father like a chastened schoolboy awaiting judgment. Robert immediately stood to greet me with obvious relief and gratitude, but Derek remained seated, his eyes fixed intently on the polished conference table surface, as if he couldn't bear to make eye contact with me. "Madison, thank you so much for coming. I honestly wasn't certain you would accept my invitation." Robert's handshake was as firm as ever, but his distinguished face looked aged far beyond the single year that had passed since our last meeting. Stress and genuine regret had carved new lines around his tired eyes. I took a seat directly across from them both, maintaining my composure and professional demeanor. "Your letter was quite unexpected, Robert." "As was the complete education of this past year," he replied solemnly, glancing meaningfully at his son. "But absolutely necessary for both of us. Derek has something very important to say to you." Derek finally looked up from the table, and I was genuinely surprised by what I saw. The arrogant gleam I remembered so well had completely vanished from his eyes, replaced by something I had never seen there before in all our interactions: genuine humility and what appeared to be authentic shame. "I owe you a sincere and complete apology," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "What I did was completely unprofessional, vindictive, and potentially dangerous to public safety. There is absolutely no excuse for my behavior or my actions that day." His words sounded somewhat rehearsed, as if he had practiced them many times, but the shame and regret coloring his entire face appeared completely authentic and heartfelt. Still, A simple apology couldn't erase the pain and professional damage of the past year. "Apology noted," I replied neutrally, neither accepting nor rejecting it outright. I wanted to see what else they had to offer beyond words. Robert cleared his throat nervously and slid a thick folder across the polished table toward me. "There is much more, Madison. This company has been rebuilt completely from its foundation up. New safety protocols, comprehensive new review processes, entirely new leadership structure throughout every department. Derek is no longer in any management position whatsoever. He is relearning this business properly this time, from the absolute ground up, with constant supervision and regular evaluations." I opened the folder carefully, maintaining my poker face. Inside was a detailed overview of their new operational systems, impressively thorough and comprehensive, along with a consulting contract offering a substantial fee. "We are not asking you to come back to Sterling," Robert clarified immediately, reading my expression, "just to evaluate our new approach objectively, to ensure we have truly changed and earned the right to continue serving this community safely." As I carefully scanned the documents, Derek stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor with a sharp sound that broke the tension. "There's something else I need to give you." His voice cracked with emotion. He left the room quickly, returning moments later with a smaller envelope. He placed it before me with visibly shaking hands. Inside was a cashier's check for exactly the amount of my entire wedding expenses, calculated down to the penny for the last floral arrangement and photographer's fee. The precision was stunning and obviously deliberate. "How did you possibly know this precise figure?" I asked suspiciously, studying the check with amazement. "Your wedding planner is my cousin's best friend," Robert admitted somewhat sheepishly. "I asked for the complete total because I wanted this gesture to be absolutely precise and meaningful." Derek spoke again, this time more steadily than before, but still with obvious emotion. "Consider it our genuine gift to you, the one I claim to be giving when I had absolutely no right to say such a thing. It can never undo the pain I caused, but it's a start." A flash of anger surged through me at the presumption. Did they really think money could fix this situation? That they could simply buy their way back to ethical standing and my forgiveness? Before I could respond with the sharp words forming in my mind, Derek placed a small USB drive beside the check. "This also belongs to you completely. It's the entire project management system you created, with all the passwords and access points restored. We've managed to recreate basic functionality, but it's never worked properly without you. It's yours to take, modify, or delete entirely." I stared at the tiny drive, feeling the weight of 3 years of dedicated work condensed into something I could hold between 2 fingers. The system I had built with such care and precision that had been used as a weapon against me when Derek prevented others from learning it properly. In that pivotal moment, looking at these 2 men, one broken by his own ethical failures, the other humbled by the devastating consequences of his arrogance, I realized something profound about revenge and justice. Sometimes the greatest vengeance arrives without you having to deliver it yourself. Sometimes it comes naturally through the consequences of people's own actions. The most satisfying revenge isn't always about destruction or getting even. It's about surviving, thriving, and watching others reckon honestly with the mess they've made of their lives and careers. It's about building something better from the ashes of what they tried to destroy. I closed the folder decisively and stood up, maintaining my dignity and composure. "I'll review your proposals thoroughly and get back to you within the week. My consulting fee will be triple your initial offer, paid completely in advance. My team will need unrestricted access and full transparency in every aspect of your operations." Robert nodded immediately without hesitation. "Agreed, completely." "And one more non-negotiable condition," I continued, looking directly at Derek with steady eyes. "You personally will complete every single training module I assign, no matter how basic or time-consuming they might seem. You'll learn every aspect of proper project management, ethical submission practices, and regulatory compliance. You'll become this company's foremost expert on doing things the right way, not just the profitable way. Color drained from Derek's face, but he nodded solemnly. Yes, I understand completely and accept your terms. Then we might have something meaningful to discuss. I gathered my belongings and walked confidently to the door, pausing with my hand on the handle. Oh, and Robert, the check is completely unnecessary. Seeing your son learn the true value of integrity and professional ethics will be gift enough for me. I left them sitting there in stunned silence, the check untouched on the polished table, and walked out of Sterling Architecture with my head held high and my dignity intact. Over the following months, our partnership flourished beyond my wildest expectations. The downtown project was completed ahead of schedule and under budget, becoming a model for future developments. My consulting firm expanded nationally, and I became known throughout the industry as the woman who transformed a wedding day betrayal into revolutionary change. But the greatest satisfaction came from watching Derek genuinely transform himself. He completed every training module with perfect scores, asked thoughtful questions, and gradually became the ethical professional his position demanded. True power isn't about destruction or revenge. It's about having the ability to destroy someone and choosing instead to help them become better. It's about rising so far above their level that they spend years climbing to reach where you naturally stand. Sometimes the sweetest victory is not what you tear down, but what you build from the ashes of what tried to destroy you.